Ancient monuments point to the stars for a reason. Across every continent and every era, humanity has told stories of celestial gates, portals linking our world to the realms above. These are not mere fairy tales, they are a profound and persistent thread in the fabric of our history. By the end of this journey, you will see a hidden pattern connecting ziggurats, pyramids, and even modern physics into a single, breathtaking idea. We will uncover why a Roman god with two faces guards a symbolic passage through time, and how a secret society believed they could find a frozen paradise at the top of the world. This exploration reveals our deepest, oldest ambition to reach beyond the sky. What does it say about us that we have never stopped searching for a way through the heavens? The idea begins at the very dawn of civilization. In the fertile land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, the ancient Mesopotamians built the first cities, and with them they built the first celestial gates. These were not subtle metaphors hidden in text. They were massive, towering structures of baked brick that dominated the flat horizon, impossible to ignore. They called them ziggurats. To our modern eyes, a ziggurat might look like a stepped pyramid, but to the people of Babylon, or Nippur, it was something far more profound. It was a literal stairway to heaven. Each level, each terrace represented a step closer to the divine. The world of humans, known as Kai, was the ground upon which they stood. The realm of the high god Anu was the distant, shimmering sky. The ziggurat was the bridge between them, a man-made mountain designed to facilitate a sacred connection. The most famous of all was the Etemenanki in Babylon, a name that translates to the temple of the foundation of heaven and earth. Its very title declares its purpose to be the anchor point, the foundational link between two separate realities. This was architecture as a portal. Priests would ascend the vast staircases in elaborate rituals, not just to perform ceremonies, but to symbolically climb into the realm of the gods to bring divine order down to the chaotic earth. This concept bled directly into their mythology. Consider the epic of Etana, a legendary king of Kish. His story tells of a desperate ascent. Etana, seeking a plant to cure his childlessness, is carried into the heavens on the back of a giant eagle. As they climb, the world below shrinks, the sea becomes like a mere pond, and the earth itself transforms into a small garden. This is not just a flight, it is a passage through layers of reality, a journey made possible by a celestial creature. The myth and the monument are two sides of the same belief. One is a story of a gateway journey, the other is the physical, monumental expression of that very gateway. The ziggurat stood as a permanent invitation, a fixed point where heaven and earth were believed to touch, waiting for the worthy to make the climb. From the baked brick ziggurats of Mesopotamia, this idea of a stairway to heaven traveled westward, transforming from monumental architecture into a profoundly personal vision. Centuries later, in the arid landscape of the ancient Near East, a man named Jacob experienced a dream that would echo through millennia. Fleeing from his family, using a stone for a pillow, he slept under the open sky. In his sleep, he saw a structure the biblical text calls a ladder, though the Hebrew word sulam suggests something more like a massive stairway or a ramp. This stairway was set upon the earth, and its top reached all the way to the heavens, and behold, the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. Above it stood the Lord himself. This is Jacob's ladder, a vision of a direct, active connection between realms. Unlike the static, priest-climbed ziggurat, this was a dynamic portal. The traffic was two-way, angels moving between heaven and earth, signifying an open channel of communication and divine presence. When Jacob awoke, he was terrified. He said, "Surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven." He took the stone he had used as a pillow, set it upright as a pillar, and anointed it with oil, marking the spot. He named the place Bethel, which literally means house of God. In that single night, the concept of the celestial gate was internalized and democratized. It was no longer only a massive public work accessible to priests, but a spiritual reality that could appear to anyone, anywhere, in a moment of revelation. The gate was not just a location, it was an event, a sudden thinning of the veil between worlds. This powerful motif of the ladder or stairway as a spiritual portal became a cornerstone of later Jewish mystical traditions. In Merkaba mysticism, which focused on the vision of the divine chariot from the book of Ezekiel, practitioners engaged in intense ascetic practices and recited complex hymns. Their goal was a visionary ascent through multiple heavenly palaces or hekalot to stand before the divine throne. This was a deliberate, ritualized reenactment of Jacob's dream, a structured method to climb that ladder. Later, Kabbalistic thought further refined this. The ladder became a symbol for the Tree of Life, a diagram of 10 spheres or sephirot that represent the emanations of God and the structure of all creation. The mystic's journey was an ascent through these spheres, climbing the ladder of divine attributes to achieve union or enlightenment. So from a lonely traveler's dream, we see the seed of an entire mystical technology for traversing the celestial gate. The physical monument had become a spiritual pathway, a blueprint for the soul's journey home. This dream of a ladder did not exist in a vacuum. Far to the south, along the fertile banks of the Nile, an entire civilization was building a physical and spiritual infrastructure for the same celestial journey. Their belief was carved in stone, deep within the very heart of their most iconic monuments. We find it in the pyramid texts, the oldest known religious writings in the entire world. These are not books you could hold. They are intricate spells and incantations etched directly onto the inner walls of pyramids at Saqqara, meant for the eyes of gods and the soul of a single man, the entombed pharaoh. Their purpose was breathtakingly specific. They were a cosmic guidebook, a set of instructions to navigate the perilous afterlife and achieve one ultimate goal: to ascend and join the circumpolar stars. The Egyptians called these stars the imperishable ones, the fixed points in the northern sky that never set below the horizon. To reach them was to achieve eternal life beyond decay. The journey was perilous, filled with fiery lakes and demonic gatekeepers. This is where the spells come in. They provide the pharaoh with the words of power, the secret names, and the precise rituals to pass each obstacle. Among the most poignant are the ascending by ladder spells. One inscription proclaims, "A ladder to the sky is set up for me, that I may ascend on it to the sky." Another states, "The king ascends upon the ladder which his father Ra made for him." This ladder is not a physical object, but a divine conduit, a spiritual technology granted by the sun god himself. It is the means for the royal soul to climb out of the tomb and into the celestial realm. This concept connects directly to a foundational Egyptian symbol, the Akhit. The Akhit is often translated as horizon, but it means so much more. It is the place of transformation, the junction between the earth and the sky, the realm of the living and the dead. It is most famously depicted in hieroglyphs as the sun disk cradled between two mountains. This is not a passive landscape, it is a gateway. Every evening, the sun god Ra was believed to enter this gateway in the west, traveling through the underworld to be reborn at dawn in the east. The pyramid itself was an architectural embodiment of the Akhit, a man-made mountain designed to be this transformative gateway for the pharaoh. His tomb was not an end but a launch point. The spells on the walls were the ignition sequence. The soul would rise, use the divine ladder, and pass through the Akhit gateway to become one of the imperishable stars. Here, the celestial gate is not a metaphor or a fleeting vision. It is a meticulously planned, magically supported, one-way ticket to eternity, written in stone for a king. But the Egyptians were not the only ones to see their land as the sacred center of the world. Far across the Mediterranean, in the rugged mountains of Greece, a different kind of center held a different kind of power. At the sanctuary of Delphi, nestled on the slopes of Mount Parnassus, there stood a curious object. It was a stone, an oval-shaped rock, often depicted as being covered in a net-like pattern. The Greeks called it the omphalos, and its meaning was profound. It was the navel of the world. This was no arbitrary title. It stemmed from a foundational myth. The story goes that Zeus, king of the gods, wanted to locate the exact center of the earth. To do this, he released two golden eagles from the opposite ends of the world, setting them to fly at equal speed. Their flight paths converged at a single point high above the landscape of Greece. They met directly over Delphi. To mark this cosmic center point, a sacred stone was placed there. The omphalos was that stone, a physical marker of the world's axis. It was the point where heaven and earth were believed to be connected by an invisible umbilical cord, a conduit for divine energy. This made Delphi more than just a city. It was the beating heart of the known world, the place where the veil between the human and the divine was at its thinnest. And this is why the most important oracle in the ancient world operated there. The Pythia, the priestess of Apollo, would sit on a tripod stool over a fissure in the earth, said to emit intoxicating vapors. In a trance-like state, she would deliver her cryptic prophecies. The process was understood as a form of divine possession. Apollo, the god of prophecy, would speak through her. But the location was everything. She did not perform this ritual just anywhere. She did it at the omphalos, at the world's navel. The stone was seen as the receiver, the focal point that channeled celestial knowledge from the gods above down into the earthly realm and directly into the mouth of the Pythia. People from all over the Greek world, from common citizens to mighty kings, would make arduous pilgrimages to this spot. They came to ask crucial questions about war, colonization, and personal fate. They were, in essence, journeying to the world's central switchboard, hoping to tap into the divine communication line that the omphalos represented. So while the Egyptian gateway was a one-way ascent for a king's soul, the Greek omphalos was a two-way communication hub for the living. It was a permanent open channel, a celestial hotline grounded in a simple stone at the center of everything. The stone at Delphi marked a fixed point, a sacred center for divine whispers. But what if a gateway was not a place, but a moment in time? For the Romans, this was not a philosophical question, but a matter of state survival, overseen by a god with two faces. His name was Janus, the deity of beginnings, endings, and every passage in between. He was the god of doorways, gates, and transitions, literally depicted with one face looking forward and one looking back, simultaneously observing the past and the future. This duality made him the perfect guardian of thresholds, not just of homes, but of the entire Roman state. His most famous temple in the Roman Forum was not a typical enclosed building. It was a ceremonial gateway, a bronze arch with double doors at each end. These doors held immense symbolic power. In times of peace, they were shut tight, a sign of tranquility secured within the boundaries of the empire. But when Rome went to war, a profound ritual unfolded. The doors of Janus's temple were solemnly opened. This was not a practical act for soldiers to march through. It was a monumental symbolic gesture. By opening the gates of Janus, the Romans were invoking the god's power over passages. They were, in effect, ritually opening a celestial and martial gateway, allowing the legions to pass from a state of peace into a state of war and channeling divine favor for their journey toward victory. It was a gateway of state transition, blessed by a two-faced god who could see both the cause and the hoped-for outcome. The connection to time itself is embedded in our calendar. The month of January, Januarius, is named for him. It is the gateway month, the door that swings open from the old year into the new, a time for looking back and planning ahead. So Janus transforms the concept of the celestial gate. It is no longer just a ladder to the stars or a stone marking the world's center. It becomes a temporal portal, a ritualized moment where a society consciously steps from one reality into another, under the watchful gaze of a god who holds both the beginning and the end in his sight. The gate is in the decision, in the declaration, in the turning of a page. While Janus guarded the passage between peace and war, the Norse imagination envisioned a bridge of pure, terrifying fire. This was Bifrost, the shimmering, burning rainbow that arcs across the sky, connecting our world, Midgard, to the golden realm of the gods, Asgard. It is not a gentle path. Old Norse poetry describes it as the most splendid of bridges, built with more skill and artistry than any other, yet it is perpetually aflame. This fire serves a vital purpose. It is a defensive mechanism, a barrier that prevents the frost giants and other chaotic beings of Jotunheim from simply marching into the divine realm. Guarding this sole point of passage is the watchman, Heimdall. He is a figure of preternatural senses, said to need less sleep than a bird, able to hear grass growing on the earth and wool growing on sheep. From his hall at the bridge's end, he stands vigilant, the Jijala horn at his side, ready to sound the alarm at the first sign of invasion. Bifrost is therefore a celestial gate of the most explicit kind, a fortified, monitored passageway between realms, but one that is inherently unstable, destined to shatter at the climax of Ragnarok when the forces of chaos finally assault the heavens. Yet this brilliant, burning bridge is just one pathway within a far vaster cosmic system. To understand the full architecture of the Norse universe, you must see Bifrost as a single road on an unimaginable map, a map drawn not on parchment, but in the form of a living tree. This is Yggdrasil, the world tree, an immense ash whose roots and branches hold all of creation. Its three great roots delve into separate wells, anchoring it in the realm of the gods, the land of the frost giants, and the misty world of the dead. Its colossal trunk rises through the center of everything, and its highest branches spread over Asgard itself. Within this living structure are contained all 9 realms, from the luminous home of the gods to the dark underworld of hell. Yggdrasil is not just a tree, it is the ultimate connective tissue of reality. A squirrel named Ratatoska runs endlessly up and down its trunk, carrying messages and insults between the eagle at the top and the dragon gnawing at its roots. The tree is the axis upon which all worlds turn. So while Bifrost is the specific, guarded gate between 2 points, Yggdrasil is the entire network, the root system and canopy that contains every possible gate and pathway. One is a brilliant, fragile bridge. The other is the eternal, suffering tree that gives the bridge a place to exist. Together, they present a complete vision of the cosmos as a series of interconnected realms, linked by sacred, perilous passages that only the worthy, the watchful, or the doomed may traverse. The Norse envisioned a cosmic tree, but across the Himalayas, an even grander axis supported the heavens. In the ancient cosmologies of Hinduism, Jainism, and Buddhism, the center of all creation is not a bridge or a ladder, but a mountain of unimaginable scale and splendor. This is Mount Meru, also called Sumeru, the golden pillar of the universe. Described in texts like the Puranas, Meru is not a mere peak on our earthly map. It is a colossal, luminous mountain, often said to be made of gold and precious stones, rising at the very heart of existence. Around this fixed central axis, the sun, the moon, and all the stars and planets are believed to revolve in their celestial path. It is the pivot of reality itself. Its roots plunge deep into the infernal realms below, and its summit pierces the highest heaven, touching the divine city of Brahma, the creator god. This makes Mount Meru the ultimate celestial gate, a stationary ladder connecting every layer of the cosmos, from the darkest hells to the brightest paradise. The journey for a soul seeking liberation is often framed as an ascent of this cosmic mountain, passing through successive realms of consciousness and divinity to reach the ultimate peak. This profound concept did not stay confined to scripture. It was translated directly into stone. Across India and Southeast Asia, the towering spires of Hindu temples known as shikaras are architectural replicas of Mount Meru. When you stand before the majestic silhouette of the Kandariya Mahadeva temple at Khajuraho or the soaring vimanas of South Indian temples, you are not just looking at a building. You are looking at a scaled-down model of the universe with a central shrine representing the summit of the cosmic mountain. To walk through the temple gates and proceed toward the inner sanctum is to symbolically embark on that spiritual ascent, moving from the outer, material world toward the inner, divine axis. The temple becomes a functional gateway, a tool for transcendence, guiding the devotee along the same path a soul would take up the slopes of Meru. Here, the celestial gate is not a fleeting vision or a guarded bridge. It is a permanent, geometrically perfect structure built by human hands to mirror the very architecture of the cosmos, inviting anyone who enters to begin the climb. The temple's spire points upward, but another form distills the cosmic mountain into a shape of profound stillness. Across the Buddhist world, from the plains of India to the peaks of Tibet, you will find the stupa. At first glance, it appears simple, a solid, hemispherical mound of earth or brick, often painted white and crowned with a spire, but this simplicity is deceptive. Every curve, every layer is a precise map of the path to enlightenment. The dome itself, called the Anda, represents the womb of the universe, the perfected void from which all potential arises. At its summit sits a small, square railing known as the Harmika. This is not merely decorative. The Harmika symbolizes the world of the gods, the highest realm of conditioned existence, just below the threshold of ultimate liberation. And piercing directly through the center of the entire structure, from its base deep in the earth to its highest point, runs a central pillar called the Yasti. This is the axis mundi, the world axis. It is the silent, vertical conduit connecting all realms, the channel through which divine energy flows and through which consciousness ascends. The entire stupa is built around this invisible line, making the monument not just a tomb for relics, but a functioning spiritual antenna, aligning the earthly site with the timeless reality of nirvana. To engage with this gateway, you do not enter it, you walk around it. This practice is called circumambulation. Devotees move in a clockwise direction, following the path of the sun, tracing a sacred circle around the base. With each step, with each revolution, the practitioner is not just showing respect. They are enacting a miniature spiritual journey. They are passing through a symbolic gate with every circuit, moving from the outer world of illusion and suffering closer to the inner truth, the silent axis at the heart of the structure. The circular path mirrors the cycle of samsara, the endless wheel of birth and death, while the unwavering central pillar points the way out. The walker, caught in the motion of the circle, keeps their focus on the still central point. In this way, the stupa is a paradox, a stationary monument that facilitates a profound inner journey. It is a gate you pass through by orbiting its silent, monumental truth. The silent axis of the stupa points upward, but in the misty peaks of China's Hunan province, a gateway was carved not by human hands, but by the slow, patient work of the earth itself. This is Tianmen Mountain, and at its summit lies a breathtaking sight, a vast, natural archway piercing straight through the heart of the rock. This formation is known as Tianmen Dong, the Heaven's Gate. For over 1,000 years, this colossal opening has been revered not as a simple geological wonder, but as a literal portal. In Taoist cosmology, which deeply influenced Chinese thought, the universe is divided into three primary realms: Tian, the heavens; Dai, the earth; and Ren, humanity. Between these realms, communication and passage were possible, but required specific, sacred points of contact. The natural arch of Tianmen, appearing as a door of pure stone opening into the sky, was seen as the perfect manifestation of such a point, a permanent bridge between the earthly Dai and the heavenly Tian. It was believed that through this gate, celestial beings could descend, and the spirits of the worthy could ascend. This was not just a folk belief, it was a matter of imperial statecraft. Historical records tell of emperors, most notably those of the Tang dynasty, making solemn pilgrimages to Tianmen Mountain. They would perform elaborate rituals and ceremonies at the base of this natural arch, offering sacrifices and prayers. Their goal was profound: to open a line of communication with the mandate of heaven itself, to receive divine approval for their rule, and to ensure harmony between the celestial order and their earthly kingdom. The mountain became a colossal altar, and the arch was the focal point where heaven and earth met. Even today, the cultural power of this site endures. The winding road with its 99 hairpin turns that leads up the mountain is called the Heaven-Linking Avenue, a modern path for a very ancient journey. Visitors who walk through the arch itself often describe a feeling of crossing a threshold, of leaving one world and entering another, a testament to the enduring psychological power of this celestial gate. It stands as a permanent reminder that sometimes the most convincing portals are the ones the world builds for itself. The stone arch of Tianmen stands open to the sky, but some of the most potent gates are hidden in the earth, waiting in silent, water-filled darkness. Deep in the jungles of the Yucatan Peninsula, the ancient Maya lived on a vast limestone shelf, a landscape where rivers ran not on the surface but underground. The ceiling of these hidden waterways would sometimes collapse, creating sudden, sheer-sided sinkholes that exposed the groundwater below. The Maya called these cenotes, and they saw them as far more than sources of fresh water. To them, each cenote was a sacred opening, a direct portal to Xibalba, the fearsome and watery underworld. This realm was not a place of simple punishment, but a complex, layered universe of its own, ruled by malevolent gods of disease and death. The cenote was the mouth of that realm, a threshold where the world of the living and the world of the dead met in a pool of still, dark water. This made them places of immense power and profound danger. The Maya believed the gods of Xibalba, particularly the rain god Chok, resided in these watery depths. To ensure the cycle of life continued, to plead for rain to nourish their crops, communication with these gods was essential. But you could not simply shout into the hole. The portal demanded a transaction. This is where the practice of ritual offerings entered the cenote. Archaeologists diving into these deep, dark wells have recovered astonishing treasures: jade ornaments, finely painted pottery, golden bells, and copal incense. These were gifts, payments to appease the lords of Xibalba and to encourage Chok to send his life-giving rains. But the most powerful offering, the one believed to open the gate most effectively, was human life. Ritual sacrifices, often of young men or children, were conducted at sacred cenotes like the famous Well of Sacrifice at Chichen Itza. The victims, sometimes adorned in finery, were cast into the deep water as messengers to the gods. This act was a grim form of diplomacy, sending a living ambassador through the portal to negotiate directly with the deities below. Yet this gateway was never seen as one way. The cenote was a cosmic plumbing system, a sacred channel connecting all three levels of the Maya cosmos. The heavens, the earthly realm, and the underworld were linked in a constant cycle. While sacrifices and gifts descended into Xibalba, the blessings of the gods were expected to ascend. The most vital blessing was rain itself. The water in the cenote, fed by underground rivers, was seen as the very substance of the underworld. When it evaporated under the hot sun, rising as mist and clouds, the Maya perceived this as the answered prayers and divine gifts rising from Xibalba through the portal to water their world. So the cenote was a bidirectional valve, a place of both terrifying descent and hopeful ascent, where the fate of the living was negotiated in the silent, dark waters of the underworld's gate. The dark waters of the cenote were a gateway to the underworld, but across the Atlantic, a different people looked up and saw a gate among the stars. In the rugged Bandiagara escarpment of Mali, the Dogon people have preserved a cosmology that has stunned and perplexed the modern world. For centuries, long before the invention of powerful telescopes, their oral traditions spoke of profound knowledge about a star we call Sirius, the brightest in our night sky. But the Dogon spoke not of one star but of a companion. They described a tiny, incredibly dense and heavy star that orbits Sirius in an elliptical path over a period of 50 years. They called this star Po Tolo, Po meaning star and Tolo meaning seed, a name that poetically captures its small, fundamental nature. This is a precise description of Sirius B, a white dwarf star that is completely invisible to the naked eye. European astronomers only confirmed its existence in the 1860s, and its immense density was not understood until the early 20th century. So how did an isolated African tribe possess such specific, accurate knowledge about a star they could not possibly see? The Dogon answer is woven into their entire creation myth. They say their knowledge came from visitors, beings they call the Namo. These are described as amphibious, fish-like entities, masters of water and language, who arrived from the Sirius system in a great vessel. This vessel, often called an ark, did not simply fly. It is described as spinning, and when it landed, it stirred up a great whirlwind and carved out a hole in the earth before settling with a thunderous noise. This event, this arrival, established a permanent connection, a kind of cosmic umbilical cord or gate between the Sirius system and our own planet. The Namo, according to the stories, were not invaders but benevolent teachers. They imparted wisdom, social structure, and that astonishing astronomical knowledge to the Dogon ancestors. This narrative, recorded by French anthropologists in the 1930s, has since become a cornerstone for proponents of the ancient astronaut theory. The argument is compelling on the surface. Here is a people with impossible knowledge, and they themselves credit it to star-born visitors. It suggests a literal, physical celestial gate was opened in the distant past, a bridge across light years traversed by the Namo's spinning arc. The story forces a difficult question. Is this a case of astonishingly preserved ancient wisdom passed down from a forgotten, advanced civilization? Or is it a miraculous coincidence woven into a spiritual metaphor? The Dogon Gate is not made of stone or water, but of information, a thread of specific data that seems to connect a remote cliffside village directly to a binary star system 8.6 light-years away. It stands as one of history's most tantalizing celestial gate mysteries, written not in hieroglyphs but in the living memory of a people who have always watched the sky. From a stargate in the heavens, we turn to a journey that begins on a single rock. In the heart of Jerusalem, beneath the golden dome of one of the world's most sacred sites, lies a foundation stone. Islamic tradition holds that from this very spot, the Prophet Muhammad embarked on the most profound journey a human soul can undertake, the Isra and Miraj. It begins with a night journey, the Isra. The Prophet is said to have been transported in a single night from the sacred mosque in Mecca to the farthest mosque, Al-Aqsa, in Jerusalem. This was not a physical journey by camel or foot, but a miraculous traversal, bridging the spiritual centers of the faith in an instant. But this was only the prelude. In Jerusalem, he encountered a gathering of the great prophets who came before him, including Abraham, Moses, and Jesus. This communion affirmed his role in the long line of divine messengers. Then, from the foundation stone, the celestial ascent, the Miraj, truly began. He was carried upward on the Burak, a magnificent creature described as being larger than a donkey but smaller than a mule, with a face of great beauty and wings. With a single leap, the Burak could place its hooves at the farthest edge of its sight. This being was the vehicle for crossing the ultimate threshold. Together, they ascended through the 7 layers of the heavens. At each level, Muhammad met another prophet, each residing in a celestial sphere corresponding to their spiritual station. He passed through realms of dazzling light and profound silence until he reached the farthest boundary, the Lot tree of the utmost boundary. Beyond this tree, no created being may pass. It is the final veil. Here, Muhammad experienced the direct presence of the divine, receiving the commandment for his community to pray 50 times each day. Through the intercession of Moses, who counseled that this was too heavy a burden for the people, the number was eventually reduced to the 5 daily prayers that observant Muslims practice to this day. This entire miraculous journey from the rock in Jerusalem to the divine presence and back is understood as having taken place within a fraction of a single night. The dome of the rock built over that foundation stone centuries later is not merely a mosque, it is a monument marking the terrestrial launch pad of this celestial voyage. It physically enshrines the point where heaven and earth were momentarily fused, where a man was taken to the ultimate gate, not for his sake alone, but to bring a divine rhythm back to all of humanity. The Miraj transforms the celestial gate from a place of arrival into a journey of return, where the ultimate revelation is brought down and woven into the daily fabric of life. The journey from a single rock to the divine presence finds a parallel in another ancient map, one drawn not for the feet but for the soul. Within Jewish mysticism, the Kabbalah presents a breathtaking blueprint for the structure of all reality, known as the Tree of Life. This is not a physical tree, but a diagram of 10 spheres or sephiroth, arranged in 3 columns and connected by 22 distinct paths. Each sephirah represents a divine emanation, a specific attribute or channel through which the infinite, unknowable essence of God flows into the created world. Think of it as a cosmic circuit board where spiritual energy descends from the top down, shaping everything from the grandest galaxy to the quietest human thought. At the very summit sits Keter, the crown. This is the point of pure, undifferentiated divine will, the first spark of creation so close to the source it is almost indistinguishable from it. It is the ultimate celestial gate from which all existence pours forth. For the mystic, however, the journey is not one of descent but of ascent. The Tree of Life becomes a detailed map for the soul's return, a step-by-step guide to climbing back through the very gates through which creation flowed. Each sephirah is a level of consciousness, a spiritual state to be attained and understood. Moving from the lower spheres, which deal with earthly foundations and emotions, upward toward the crown, is a process of purification and enlightenment. But this path is not a gentle slope. Between the lower, more comprehensible realms and the upper, truly divine triad lies a terrifying and essential barrier known as the abyss. In some schematics, this chasm is associated with a hidden sephirah called Da'at, or knowledge. Crossing the abyss is the ultimate trial on this journey. It represents the total annihilation of the individual ego, the complete surrender of the self and all its intellectual understanding. To pass this gate, one must let go of everything they think they know about God, about the universe, and about themselves. It is a leap into absolute, unknowing faith. Only by becoming nothing can the soul become one with the everything that lies beyond, in the sublime spheres of pure intellect and divine wisdom above. So the Kabbalistic tree transforms the concept of the celestial gate into an internal, psychological architecture. Each path between the spheres is a gate of understanding, and the terrifying abyss is the final, non-negotiable checkpoint. The key to passing through is not a physical token or a magical phrase, but the total dissolution of the separate self. It is the most demanding gate of all, for it requires you to leave everything you are at the threshold. The soul's journey through the abyss is a solitary passage, but some gates require a fellowship to find them. In the misty legends of Britain, there lies an island that is not on any map. This is Avalon, the final refuge of the once and future king. After the tragic battle of Camlan, where Arthur was mortally wounded by his own son Mordred, the king did not receive a simple burial. Instead, he was placed upon a mysterious black barge, accompanied by 3 Soma queens, and taken across the waters to this hidden isle. Avalon is described as an otherworldly realm, a place of eternal spring and healing where time itself flows differently. It is often depicted as perpetually shrouded in a soft, silver mist, making it invisible to ordinary eyes and unreachable by ordinary boats. This is not a geographical location you can sail to with a chart and a compass. It is a Celtic Isle of the Blessed, a parallel dimension accessible only through specific, enchanted passages. The gate to Avalon opens under precise magical conditions, or to those who possess a sacred right, like the fairy queen Morgan Le Fay, who is both Arthur's sister and one of the guardians of the Isle. Even the legendary sword Excalibur, the symbol of Arthur's divine right to rule, was forged here, its metal tempered in the fires of this other world. This detail is crucial. The weapon that defined his kingship, the tool of his earthly power, originated within the celestial gate itself. It was a piece of Avalon brought into our world. And at the end, it was to Avalon that Arthur returned, his body carried through that misty veil. The promise of the legend is that he does not die there, but sleeps, healing from his wounds, waiting for the hour of Britain's greatest need to return. Avalon, therefore, is a gate with a two-way hinge. It is a source of power that flows into our world, and a sanctuary that receives our world's greatest heroes when their time here is done. It exists outside the linear flow of history, a pocket of timelessness where destiny is preserved, not concluded. This transforms the celestial gate from a ladder to the stars into a horizontal passage, a voyage across water into a land that exists just beside our own, separated not by distance, but by the quality of reality itself. It is a promise that the greatest of us are not gone, but merely waiting on the other side of a mist that someday may part again. Avalon's misty veil hides a horizontal gate, but another path turns the journey inward into the deepest caverns of the self. This is the path of the alchemist, and their map is a single cryptic acronym, VITRIOL. It stands for a Latin phrase, Visita interiora terrae rectificando in venis occultum lapidem. Translated, it commands, visit the interior of the earth by rectifying, you will find the hidden stone. To the uninitiated, this sounds like a literal instruction for mineralogy, a recipe for digging in the dirt. But for the true seeker, every word is a profound allegory. The earth is not the ground beneath our feet. It is the dense, dark, chaotic material of our own inner nature, our subconscious mind, our base instincts and untamed passions. The interior of the earth is the shadowy landscape of the human psyche. To visit it means to undertake a courageous descent into oneself, to confront the parts we hide even from our own awareness. This is the first terrifying step through the gate. The process of rectifying is the long and arduous work of purification. In a laboratory, rectification refers to the repeated distillation of a substance to remove impurities to make it perfect. In the inner world, it is the grueling work of self-examination, meditation, and moral discipline. It is the burning away of ego, fear, and desire through the fires of conscious effort. Only through this relentless inner refinement does the final promise reveal itself. The hidden stone is the legendary philosopher's stone, the alchemist's ultimate prize. But this stone is not a physical object that turns lead to gold. It is the crystallized essence of the purified self, the awakened consciousness, the point where the individual soul aligns with the universal spirit. Finding this stone is discovering the key that unlocks the celestial gate from within. The entire motto, then, is a precise formula for internal alchemy. The celestial gate is not a door in the sky you can find by traveling outward. It is a latent potential inside your own being. To open it, you must first journey down into your personal underworld and transform the raw, leaden material of your psyche into spiritual gold. This process was often depicted in alchemical texts with the image of a man standing inside a sphere, with the phrase VITRIOL inscribed around him. He is both the explorer and the territory, the miner and the mine. The gate he seeks is the moment his inner work completes the circuit, when the rectified self becomes the occultum lapidem, the hidden stone that is also the key. This turns the quest for the celestial into the most intimate and demanding adventure of all, where the only map you need is written in the language of your own soul, and the only passport is your willingness to face everything you are. The internal quest for the hidden stone found its most public and permanent expression not in a secret laboratory, but on a quiet street in Rome. In 1680, an eccentric nobleman named Massimiliano Palombara commissioned something extraordinary for the garden wall of his villa on the Esquiline Hill. He built a door, but this was no ordinary entrance, known today as the Porta Alchemica or the alchemical door. It stands as the sole survivor of 5 such gates, a physical monument to the spiritual science of its age. Its design is stark and powerful, a simple marble frame surrounding a plain wooden door, but it is the symbols carved into the stone that transform it from architecture into a riddle. The door is flanked by 2 strange, grimacing figures, often described as Egyptian-looking guardians, their presence immediately signaling that this threshold is protected, that passage is not for everyone. Above the lintel, the most prominent inscription declares its purpose in Latin. It reads, "When in your house black crows give birth to white doves, then you will be called wise." This is pure alchemical allegory. The black crow represents the nigredo, the initial stage of the work, a state of putrefaction, darkness, and despair, the first step of visiting the interior earth. The white dove is the albedo, the cleansing that follows, the purification through rectification. The promise is that if you can master this transformation within your own inner house, you will achieve wisdom. But the door itself is covered in a cryptic grid of other inscriptions and symbols, a complex cipher that has fascinated scholars for centuries. There are celestial bodies, the sun and moon, representing the masculine and feminine principles that must be united. There are alchemical glyphs for metals like lead and gold, charting the path from base matter to perfected spirit. And there is a mysterious palindrome, a phrase that reads the same forwards and backwards, see seeds non-is, which can be interpreted as if you sit, you do not go. This is the gate's ultimate challenge. It is a statement of active initiation. You cannot merely contemplate this portal from a distance. You must engage with it, decipher it, and ultimately act upon its teachings. The door, therefore, is not just a metaphor. For Palombara and his circle, which included the enigmatic alchemist known as Giuseppe Francesco Borri, this was a literal architectural representation of the celestial gate. The physical door in the garden wall symbolized the threshold between the unenlightened material world and the illuminated spiritual realm. The inscriptions were the key, or rather, the test. To understand them was to prove you had already done the inner work, that you had rectified your own nature and discovered the philosopher's stone within. Only then would the door, in a spiritual sense, swing open for you, granting passage to a higher state of being. It is a permanent public puzzle, a stone rebuke to passive observation. It declares that the gate to the celestial is real, it is here, but you must bring the key with you, forged in the fires of your own transformed self. The alchemist's door stands as a silent riddle, but some gates do not wait for deciphering, they announce themselves with blinding light. On October 13, 1917, in a field near Fatima, Portugal, a crowd of tens of thousands witnessed something that defied all laws of nature. They had gathered because 3 young shepherd children, Lucia, Francisco, and Jacinta, had prophesied that on that day the Virgin Mary would perform a miracle so all would believe. What happened next was documented in countless eyewitness accounts from believers, skeptics, and journalists alike. After a period of rain, the clouds parted and the sun appeared as a dull, silvery disk. Then it began to move. Reports describe it spinning violently, throwing off brilliant rays of multicolored light in every direction. It seemed to tremble and dance in the sky. Then it plunged erratically toward the earth in a terrifying zigzag motion, radiating immense heat that dried soaked clothing and muddy ground in an instant. To the terrified crowd, it appeared the sun was detaching from the heavens and falling to crush them. Just as suddenly, it swept back up to its normal position in the sky, restoring calm. For those 10 minutes, the sky itself was not a fixed dome but a permeable, volatile screen. This was not a collective hallucination. It was a shared, physical experience witnessed by people up to 18 miles away. In that moment, the sun ceased to be a distant star and became an active, miraculous sign. Many interpreted this event as a direct rupture in the fabric of reality, a temporary celestial gate flung open by divine will. The sun, the ultimate symbol of cosmic order and life, became the portal itself. Through its chaotic dance, it was as if a veil was pulled back and a power from beyond our dimension was manifesting its presence directly to the world. This was not a gate to be traversed by human souls, but one through which divine communication and power forcefully entered our realm. The context makes this interpretation even more compelling. The miracle of the sun was the culmination of a series of apparitions and messages given to the three children, now known as the Three Secrets of Fatima. The first two secrets involved visions of hell and prophecies about the end of World War I and the outbreak of World War II, along with a call for prayer and penance. The third secret, not revealed until the year 2000, described a prophetic vision of a bishop in white being killed amid the ruins of a city, which was later interpreted as the attempted assassination of Pope John Paul II in 1981. The dancing sun, then, was the exclamation point on these grave warnings. It was the authenticating sign, a celestial stamp of urgency on the messages. The event transformed the sky into a divine telegraph with the sun as the flickering signal light. It presented the heavens not as a passive backdrop, but as an active interface, a gate that could be opened from the other side to deliver a prophetic communique to all of humanity. Whether viewed as a supernatural miracle or a profound mass psychological event, the Fatima phenomenon stands as one of the most widely attested instances in modern history where thousands of people believed with absolute conviction that they had seen a gate in the sky torn open and had felt the heat of what lay beyond. While thousands at Fatima witnessed a gate of light, a far darker interpretation of celestial portals was brewing in the shadows of post-war Germany. In the chaotic years following World War I, a secretive group emerged in Munich calling itself the Thule Society. On the surface, it was a Völkisch club obsessed with Germanic folklore and racial purity, but its true foundations were sunk deep into occult soil, weaving together ancient myths and bizarre pseudoscience into a dangerous new vision of power. Their central obsession was a lost northern paradise they called Hyperborea. Drawing from Greek legends of a land beyond the north wind, the Thule Society reimagined it as the primordial homeland of the Aryan race, a place of eternal sun and godlike beings. They believed this was not a mere legend, but a lost physical reality, a continent that had sunk or shifted, perhaps hidden behind the Arctic ice. To reach it, to reclaim that lost glory, they needed a key. That key, they believed, was not a spiritual path, but a physical gate. This belief fused with a crackpot scientific theory popular in certain German occult circles, the Weltallslayer or world ice theory. Proposed by an engineer named Hans Herberger, this theory claimed that ice was the fundamental substance of the cosmos. It posited that stars, planets, and even our moon were coated in thick layers of ice, and that cosmic catastrophes occurred when these icy bodies collided. The Thule Society absorbed this idea and twisted it to fit their mythology. They speculated that the Arctic ice cap was not just frozen water, but the crystalline remnant of the lost Hyperborean world. More importantly, they believed this ice held dormant energy vortices or hidden passages, gates that, if located and activated, could grant access to that ancient realm or tap into its superior power. These gates were not seen as metaphors. In the twisted logic of Thule ideology, they were strategic objectives. The Society's members, which included early Nazi party figures like Rudolf Hess and Alfred Rosenberg, began to frame geopolitical ambition in occult terms. The quest for Aryan supremacy became a literal search for the Hyperborean gate. The pure bloodline was not just a social goal, it was a spiritual antenna, a biological requirement to resonate with the ancient energies of that lost world and to safely pass through the gate. This created a terrifying fusion of mythology and political aim. Scientific expeditions to the Arctic, like those planned by the Nazi Onanub Research Institute, were not merely for geographical study. They were reconnaissance missions seeking physical evidence of Hyperborea and scanning for those legendary energy vortices in the polar regions. The drive for eastern expansion into Russia was in part motivated by the belief that the ancestral Aryan homeland, and thus the path to its gate, lay in the distant frozen north. Here, the celestial gate mythology was weaponized. It was stripped of its spiritual or revelatory purpose and repurposed as a source of temporal, racial power. The gate was no longer a means to enlightenment or divine communication. It was a tool for dominion, a technological secret left behind by superior ancestors, waiting to be found by those deemed worthy by blood. This dark chapter demonstrates the ultimate perversion of the gate archetype, where humanity's oldest longing to connect with a higher realm was corrupted into a mandate for conquest and a justification for unspeakable horror. The quest for a hidden polar gate was a perversion of myth, but the idea of a technological portal never truly faded. It simply changed its shape and moved from the frozen north to the boundless sky. In the 20th and 21st centuries, the ancient concept of the celestial gate has found its most provocative modern expression in the persistent mystery of unidentified flying objects. Countless reports from credible witnesses, including military pilots and radar operators, describe craft that defy our understanding of physics, performing maneuvers no known aircraft could survive. But beyond their impossible speed and agility, a specific detail recurs. These objects often appear and vanish not by speeding away over the horizon, but by blinking out of existence instantaneously, as if stepping through an invisible door. This behavior has led researchers and theorists to propose that what we are witnessing is not merely advanced propulsion, but the operation of a stargate, a localized portal that allows for instantaneous travel across vast distances or between dimensions. The mythology of the gate has evolved from a spiritual ladder to a piece of hypothesized engineering. Consider one of the most well-documented cases in modern history, the 2004 encounters involving the United States Navy carrier strike group centered on the USS Nimitz. For days, advanced naval radar systems tracked unidentified objects descending from extreme altitudes at incredible speeds, only to hover just above the ocean surface. Commander David Fravor, a veteran fighter pilot, was scrambled to intercept one of these objects. He described it as a smooth, white, oblong craft, roughly 40 feet long, with no visible wings, engines, or exhaust plume. It looked like a giant floating tic-tac. As Fravor's F/A-18 Super Hornet approached, the object reacted. It mirrored his maneuver, then accelerated with a speed and abruptness that seemed to erase the concepts of inertia and momentum. In his own words, it was like a ping-pong ball hitting a wall. It was gone. It did not streak away into the distance. It simply vanished from his sight and from the sophisticated sensors tracking it. To pilots like Fravor, trained to understand the performance envelope of every known aircraft on the planet, this was not just surprising, it was physics-breaking. The sudden disappearance, the lack of a sonic boom, the instantaneous transition from a hover to a velocity that should tear any material object apart, all of it points to a technology that bypasses conventional travel through space. It behaves as if it has access to a shortcut, a door that opens at one point and closes at another. In contemporary ufology, this hypothesized mechanism is often termed a portal or a wormhole, a tunnel through the fabric of space-time. When witnesses describe a craft that shimmers, phases, or winks out, they are describing the perceived effects of a stargate in operation. This modern narrative powerfully reframes the ancient longing. The ziggurat, the ladder, the burning bridge, all were attempts to conceptualize a passage between realms. Today, that passage is imagined not as a static monument or a spiritual state, but as a dynamic, controllable technology. The celestial gate is no longer a destination for the soul to aspire to, but a tool that someone or something already possesses and uses. It suggests that if such gates are real, then we are not the builders, we are the observers, watching from the ground as something moves through a doorway in the sky we have only just begun to imagine. This fusion of ancient myth and modern observation presents a compelling puzzle, but our next chapter unfolds not in the sky, but in a vast, circular tunnel 100 meters beneath the French-Swiss border. Here, science has built its own version of a celestial gate, or perhaps a door we were never meant to open. This is the Large Hadron Collider at CERN, the most powerful particle accelerator ever constructed by humanity. A 27-kilometer ring of supercooled magnets and staggering complexity. Its purpose is to smash protons together at velocities approaching the speed of light, recreating, for a fleeting fraction of a second, the searing conditions that existed just after the Big Bang. It is a time machine looking into the first moments of creation and a microscope probing the fundamental building blocks of reality. The science is Nobel Prize winning, leading to the confirmed discovery of the Higgs boson, the particle that gives other particles mass. Yet, surrounding this cathedral of rational inquiry, a thicket of conspiracy theories has grown, framing CERN not as a tool for discovery, but as a reckless attempt to open a dimensional portal. The logic from a certain fearful perspective is deceptively simple. If this machine can recreate the birth of the universe, could it not also tear the fabric of that universe? The fears are not about radiation leaks or electrical faults, but about metaphysical catastrophe. Online forums and sensational documentaries speculate that the immense energies concentrated in the collider could puncture space-time itself, creating a microscopic wormhole or a stable gateway to another dimension. This narrative often merges with apocalyptic or occult imagery, suggesting that scientists, in their hubris, might accidentally summon otherworldly entities or destabilize the very laws of physics, causing a breach in reality that could unravel our world from the inside out. These anxieties found a powerful symbolic anchor in a piece of art installed at the CERN complex in 2004, a 2-meter-tall statue of the Hindu deity Shiva Nataraja, the Lord of the Dance. To CERN scientists, the statue was a gift from India celebrating a profound connection. Shiva's cosmic dance symbolizes the dynamic balance of creation and destruction, the endless cycle of particle formation and dissolution that mirrors the subatomic processes studied in the lab. It is a metaphor for the energy of the universe itself. Yet, to conspiracy theorists, the statue is not a metaphor, it is a literal clue, a ceremonial dedication, or even an invocation. They point to Shiva's role as a destroyer within the Hindu trinity and ask, why place a statue of a destroyer god at the site of the world's most powerful atom smasher, unless you are actively seeking to unleash that destructive, transformative power? The statue becomes proof of intent, a modern-day omphalos marking the spot where scientists are knowingly attempting to open a gate. This collision of cutting-edge science and primal fear reveals something timeless. CERN represents humanity's ultimate tool-based reach for the celestial gate, not through prayer or ritual, but through mathematics and engineering. We are not asking gods to open a door, we are trying to build the key ourselves. The conspiracy theories, however outlandish, are a modern mythology responding to that awesome ambition. They are a cultural immune reaction, a storytelling attempt to contextualize and warn against a power so vast it feels supernatural. They ask the oldest question in a new form: what happens when we finally find the lock and the door swings open? The immense energies of a particle collider aim to unlock the universe's smallest secrets. But what if the most direct key to a celestial gate is not outside in the cosmos, but inside the human mind? In 1983, a curious document was declassified by the United States Central Intelligence Agency. It was not about spies or satellites, but about consciousness itself. Titled Analysis and Assessment of Gateway Process, this report took a serious, scientific look at an audacious claim that sound could be used to open a doorway for the human mind to walk through. The technology in question was called the Gateway Process, developed by an organization known as the Monroe Institute, named for its founder, Robert Monroe. Monroe was an ordinary businessman until he began experiencing spontaneous, terrifying episodes where he felt his consciousness detach from his physical body, floating free in what he described as other realms or dimensions. Rather than fear these experiences, he dedicated his life to studying them and, more importantly, to recreating them reliably for others. His method did not involve drugs or deep meditation alone. It centered on a precise audio technology called hemisync, short for hemispheric synchronization. The theory is elegantly simple yet profound. Our brain's two hemispheres often operate at slightly different frequencies, like two radio stations broadcasting out of sync. The gateway process uses carefully layered sound frequencies played through headphones to gently coax these two hemispheres into a single, unified brainwave state. This synchronized state, the report suggests, creates a unique coherence of consciousness, a stabilized mental platform from which awareness is no longer tethered to the physical senses. Think of it as tuning an instrument perfectly before playing a symphony. The synchronized brain is the tuned instrument, and the symphony is an out-of-body experience. The CIA document, far from dismissing this as fantasy, analyzed the neurophysics behind it. It discussed concepts like holographic reality and resonance, exploring how a coherent consciousness might interact with the fabric of space-time itself. The ultimate goal of the gateway tapes, as outlined in the report, was to train individuals to project their focused awareness beyond the physical body, to explore non-physical environments, gather information, and potentially interact with other levels of reality. This was framed not as mysticism, but as an operational tool for enhanced intuition and remote perception. In essence, the gateway process was a modern, technologically assisted attempt to build a consciousness-based celestial gate. It proposed that the portal was not made of stone or energy vortices, but of a specific, attainable state of mind. The ladder to heaven was not outside, but within the architecture of our own neurology, and it could be climbed using a specific sonic key. Here, the ancient quest for the gate becomes internalized and systematized for the 20th century. No longer the domain of prophets or alchemists alone, this was a reproducible protocol, complete with training manuals and cassette tapes, investigated by the world's most powerful intelligence agency. It represents a pivotal moment where the age-old human longing to traverse the heavens collided with the modern desire to map, test, and weaponize the inner frontier. The gate was no longer a myth or a miracle. It was a potential piece of psychic technology waiting in a set of headphones for anyone brave enough to press play. The gateway tapes offered a personal, internal key, but a few years after that CIA report was filed, a different kind of key became a global phenomenon, one you could find on television screens every week. The concept of the ancient celestial gate was reborn not in a laboratory, but in a television studio with the explosive success of the science fiction series Stargate SG-1. The show and the 1994 film that spawned it did something remarkable. It took the dusty academic theories of ancient astronauts and the mysterious monuments of Egypt, and it transformed them into a thrilling, weekly adventure. The premise was brilliantly simple. Archaeologists discover a giant, ring-shaped device buried at Giza, covered in mysterious symbols. This is the Stargate. They learn it is not a sculpture, but a piece of hyper-advanced technology, a wormhole generator built by an alien who posed as the sun god Ra. With the correct 7-symbol address, the ring activates, creating a stable, traversable portal to another identical gate on a planet light years away. In one masterful stroke, the fiction blended two powerful historical threads. It took the ancient Egyptian obsession with stellar ascension, the pyramid texts, and the journey through the Akhet, and made it literal. The pharaohs weren't just using spiritual spells to join the stars, they were potentially using a physical network left behind by their so-called gods. The Stargate became the ultimate omphalos, not a stone marking the world's center, but a piece of hardware connecting the center of Earth to countless other centers across the galaxy. The show's genius was in its consistency. It presented a complete, functioning mythology where every major ancient culture, from the Norse to the Chinese to the Mesoamerican, had been visited by these advanced beings. Their gods were aliens, and their most sacred sites often concealed or commemorated these interstellar gates. This narrative directly shaped how a generation, and now multiple generations, interpret historical mysteries. When a viewer today looks at the Grand Pyramid of Giza or the massive stone circles of Göbekli Tepe, there is a pop culture framework immediately available. The question shifts from what did this mean to them to could this have been built by or for extraterrestrials? Could this be a Stargate? The series cemented the idea of a physical, usable network, turning the celestial gate from a one-way spiritual passage into a public transit system for the cosmos. It presented the gate not as a rare miracle, but as a piece of forgotten infrastructure waiting for us to rediscover the user manual. This pop culture lens is now inseparable from the discussion. It gave the ancient astronaut theory its most vivid and compelling story, making the idea of literal stargates built by ancient aliens a default hypothesis for millions, and forever changing the way we imagine humanity's oldest stones pointing to the sky. The pop culture idea of a galactic network feels like science fiction, but the world recently experienced a moment when millions believed a real cosmic alignment was about to open a gate. The date was December 21, 2012. For years, a wave of anticipation, anxiety, and excitement had been building, all centered on the conclusion of a vast cycle in the ancient Mayan long count calendar. This was not merely the end of a year, but the completion of a 13-Bacton cycle, a period of roughly 5,125 years. Many modern interpreters looked at this terminus and saw a prophecy of doom, a prediction of the world's literal end, but a more nuanced and far more intriguing interpretation came from those who studied the astronomy woven into Mayan cosmology. They pointed to a rare celestial event coinciding with that winter solstice. On that day, from our vantage point on Earth, the sun at the solstice would align precisely with the dark rift of the Milky Way galaxy, a lane of interstellar dust clouds that runs along the galactic equator. The Maya saw this dark rift as a feature in their cosmic landscape, sometimes calling it the Black Road or the mouth of the cosmic monster. This alignment, a convergence of solar cycle and galactic plane, happens only once every 26,000 years. For believers, this was not an accident of orbital mechanics. It was a deliberate cosmic clock striking a monumental hour. They interpreted this alignment as the opening of a galactic gate, a portal through which a flood of transformative cosmic energy or consciousness would stream into our solar system and onto the Earth. This was not a gate for physical travel, but for spiritual and vibrational evolution. The idea suggested that the ancient Maya, with their extraordinarily precise calendar, were not predicting an apocalypse but mapping an opportunity. Their calendar was a countdown to a moment of potential rebirth, a celestial window when humanity could step through a threshold into a new state of being. The hype created a global phenomenon. Books were written, documentaries filmed, and spiritual retreats planned for the fateful day. People gathered at sacred sites from pyramids to mountaintops, waiting to witness or channel this transformative energy. When December 21st arrived and passed without cataclysm or visible dimensional rift, many dismissed the entire event as a modern fantasy. Yet, the deeper lesson remains profoundly relevant to our search for celestial gates. It demonstrates how humanity instinctively looks to the stars for timing. We have always used calendars to mark sacred time, from the Egyptian stellar clocks for the pharaoh's ascent to the Romans' Janus Gate marking a new year. The 2012 phenomenon showed that even in our digital age, we still interpret ancient timekeeping as a map to something greater. It revealed a collective desire for the cosmos to interact with us on schedule, for the heavens to open a gate not just in space but in time, offering a preordained moment for collective transformation. The gate may not have opened in the way some hoped, but the worldwide reaction proved the idea itself is a permanent fixture in the human psyche. We are always watching the sky, calendar in hand, waiting for the stars to align and tell us it is time to walk through. The calendar's countdown to a galactic gate may have passed without event, but the concept itself never left the realm of serious scientific inquiry. In fact, our most advanced understanding of the universe provides a theoretical framework for such passages, one that sounds like it was pulled from the pages of science fiction. These are wormholes, or more formally, Einstein-Rosen bridges. The name comes from the physicists who first explored the idea based on Albert Einstein's equations of general relativity. In simple terms, general relativity tells us that mass and energy warp the fabric of space-time, like a heavy ball placed on a stretched rubber sheet. A wormhole is theorized to be a kind of tunnel or shortcut through this warped geometry. Picture the universe as a vast, wrinkled sheet of paper. Two distant points on that sheet might be far apart if you travel across the surface. But if you could fold the paper so those 2 points touched, and then pierce a hole through the contact point, you would create a direct passage, a tunnel bypassing the long journey across the sheet. That is the essence of a wormhole, a hypothetical bridge connecting two separate locations in spacetime, potentially allowing for travel or communication across distances that would otherwise take millennia to cross at the speed of light. For decades, these bridges were considered mere mathematical curiosities, unstable quirks in the equations. Then, scientists like Kip Thorne at the California Institute of Technology began to treat them as serious physical possibilities. Thorne's work, partly inspired by a request from his friend Carl Sagan for the novel Contact, explored what it would actually take to make a wormhole traversable. The answer involves exotic matter with negative energy density, something we have never observed in bulk, to prop the tunnel open against its natural tendency to snap shut instantly. Yet, the very fact that such structures are not forbidden by our fundamental laws of physics is staggering. It means the universe in its deepest architecture might be threaded with these hidden passageways, a cosmic subway system woven into the fabric of reality itself. This brings us to a haunting and beautiful question. Our journey began with ancient ziggurats and celestial ladders, with myths of burning bridges and star-born teachers. For thousands of years, humanity has spoken of gates in the sky, portals to other realms, and shortcuts to the homes of the gods. Now, our most brilliant minds use supercomputers and complex tensor equations to map out the very same concept. So, what are we to make of this? Are our oldest stories merely poetic intuition, a primordial human guess at the universe's structure? Or could they be something else, a fragmented, symbolic memory of cosmic phenomena, a deep time recollection of a universe that is far more connected and far more strange than we ever dared to believe? The equations suggest the gates might be real. Perhaps our myths were the first draft of the map. From the first baked brick of a ziggurat to the whiteboard equations of a physicist, the story is the same. For over 5,000 years, across every culture our species has ever built, we have told versions of this tale. We have pointed to the sky and spoken of doors. We have built mountains to reach them, dreamed of ladders to climb them, and carved symbols to unlock them. We have feared them as gateways to underworlds and longed for them as passages to paradise. We have imagined them as burning bridges, spinning arcs, and silent stones at the center of the world. And today, we map them in the language of relativity and wonder if they flicker in the radar returns of impossible aircraft. This is not a coincidence, it is a pattern etched into the bedrock of human consciousness. The celestial gate is perhaps our oldest and most persistent archetype. But why? What is it about this idea that feels so essential, so true, that we cannot stop returning to it? At its heart, the gate is a symbol of radical hope. It is the conviction that our reality is not all there is, that beyond the familiar horizon of our daily lives, beyond the finality of death and the vast, cold distances between stars, there exists a connection. A way through. It represents our innate refusal to accept isolation, our boundless curiosity that always asks what is on the other side, and ultimately, it is an expression of our deepest desire to transcend. To move beyond the limits of our bodies, our planet, and our understanding, to touch something greater. Whether that journey is taken by a pharaoh's soul, a mystic's mind, or a hypothetical spacecraft, the destination is similar, a realm of more profound truth, power, or peace. Our history of searching for these gates is, in the end, the story of humanity reaching upward. So as we close this exploration, we turn the question to you. Across these 25 references, from the Etymonanky of Babylon to the equations for an Einstein-Rosen bridge, which gateway captured your imagination? Was it the watery terror of the Maya cenote, the solemn ritual of Janus's doors, or the modern mystery of the Nimitz encounter? Or perhaps you know of another celestial gate story, a local legend or a family tale that echoes this ancient longing. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this journey through the corridors of history and mystery, subscribe. There are always more doors to find, and together we can keep searching for the keys.